treat others as you want to be treated. Because I think it's all about relationships, and your day is only as good as you treat the day. Your interactions with people are only as good as how you interact with them. And if you treat people like you want to be treated, it's going to be a good day.
Welcome to the Breakthrough Podcast. I am your host, David Mancella. This podcast is dedicated to honor the people that are making this world a better place by leading organizations, companies, institutions that are actually providing massive value to the marketplace. And today we have with us one of those amazing entrepreneurs, CEOs, owners, people that is very dedicated. Richard, welcome to the show.
Thank you to be here. Welcome. Thank you very much. Look forward to being here.
Wonderful. Richard, for the audience, can you tell me your full name? Where do you live and what do you do for a living?
Yeah, so my name is Richard Strauss. I'm the CEO of Teakdecking Systems here in Sarasota, Florida, and I live in Sarasota, Florida.
Wonderful. So what does your company do?
So Teakdecking is 40 years old this year, and we, by and large, manufacture and install teak and composite decks primarily for the yacht and super yacht space, but we also build and install teak and composite decks for domestic U.S.-based production boat builders as well.
That is wonderful. What a niche market, right? And sometimes I just cannot even believe that there is, when you are on a free society like we are, there is opportunities to create businesses that supply needs for everybody, right?
Yeah, truly a niche market. We're a global company. Not only is our home office here in Sarasota, Florida, but then we have an office in Barcelona, Spain, and a factory in Valencia, Spain, which is about 3.5 hours south of Barcelona on the Med Coast.
So why Spain out of all countries?
Great question. Get asked that a lot. So back in 2019, there was an existing company in Spain that reached out to us. It was a teak deck company. Ironically, it was founded by a former employee of Teakdecking, and he branched out on his own many years ago. And but in 2019, he reached out to me and decided that he wanted to sell. And he modeled his startup of his company off of Teakdecking, so it was very similar, considerably smaller. At the time, it had 10 employees, and by March of 2020, we had a letter of intent. So there was a foundation of a company already there, and he had his office in Barcelona and the factory in Valencia. And within the first year, we took it from 10 employees to 30 employees.
Wow, in 2 years, during the pandemic.
During the pandemic.
How did you pull that off?
Lots of Teams meetings. Interesting story we had, if I may. We had two contracts for builds of super yachts in the Netherlands, which those contracts were with Teakdecking here in the States. And of course, in the middle of all this, we had the letter of intent to buy the assets of this company, which we moved forward with even through the pandemic. So we did it all through Teams meetings, and but then we got the company started up, and we decided to shift the build of these two decks from the States to Spain because the decks were going to go land in the Netherlands anyways. So we basically got the whole company up and running through doing all the engineering here, sending tool paths for templating and things like that to CNCs over in Spain, to partnerships that we've had for years. And we got the team up and running in Spain through Teams meetings.
That's incredible. And, being able to sustain the pandemic, not knowing what was going to happen, because the lockdowns were severe, especially in Canada, in Europe. They didn't allow people to go out to work for a while, right?
Well, it was interesting. It was certainly challenging at first, but there was loopholes on areas where people could work. And fortunately, we fell in one of those. So we were able to employ people through the tail end of the pandemic. So they were grateful to have a job to come to, get out of the house, go do something, be productive, members of society again. So it really worked out to our advantage, and worked out very well.
Wonderful. So,
Yeah.
in order to lead an organization like that, international, with a couple of hundred people or more, it requires a lot of dedication. So, I would love to take you into a time machine and see how you got here. So, imagine you go back when you were on your last year of high school. What was in your mind, and what did you do after that?
What was in my mind last year of high school? Women, girls, boats. No, so um, I applied for college in 11th grade and got accepted. We were able to do that then. That was 1978. I was in 11th grade. I graduated high school 79. So I went to an engineering school in Florida. I was born and raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I always knew I wanted to live in Florida. I knew that since the age of 8. So I found a school in Florida, had a mechanical engineering program that was a dual program with Georgia Tech. So it'd be 2 years at Jacksonville University, 3 years at Georgia Tech. So yeah, right after high school, I went to college. And 2 years into the program, I was really bored with mechanical engineering. So I did some research and found a school in Stuart, Florida, Florida Institute of Technology, that had a degree in marine engineering. So it was all highly specialized. And it was going to set me up for one of my lifelong aspirations, which was to run an offshore tug on the eastern seaboard. I wanted to get into the maritime industry and run offshore tugs and big tankers.
Wow.
So once I graduated, it was 1983. There was an oil embargo going on. So everyone that was working in the Gulf of Mexico was flooding the eastern seaboard. Jobs weren't to be found. But in my last year of schooling, I was asked to be an ad hoc professor in the marine diesel propulsion lab, which I gladly took on. It was extra money, and I was passionate about marine propulsion because I took it as an elective my prior year. And in that, I met one of my students whose father was the senior vice president of engineering with Sea Ray Boats. And Sea Ray was probably one of the larger production boat builders in the United States at the time. So when his son graduated from this marine propulsion degree, Sea Ray made a large donation to our lab. And so his father invited me up to Sea Ray to get a check and big D8 batteries and a bunch of things that they donated to our program, and asked me what I was going to do after I graduated. And took me through a tour of Sea Ray Boats, which was very fascinating. And he asked me for my resume, and I gave it to him, and I applied, and a couple more interviews, and got accepted. So I graduated on a Friday from Florida Institute of Technology, and I started work at Sea Ray Boats the following Monday.
That is amazing. And Sea Ray Boats is very popular nowadays still. Like, it's one of the best manufacturers of boats in North America, right?
Yeah, they're still well known. I mean, they're quite a bit different than they were back in the early 80s. And of course, they were an ESOP company at the time, which is interesting because Teakdecking is an ESOP company. So we're an employee stock-owned company. So I had an understanding, going to work for an ESOP company, an employee stock ownership plan. And that company, though, got bought out by Brunswick Corporation. At the time, Brunswick owned Mercury Marine. They owned U.S. Marine, which was Bayliner, Meridian. They were huge. And then they bought Sea Ray. And so Brunswick became the world's largest production boat builder. They were huge. And so I was there through that transition of ESOP to corporate. Right. And then I worked primarily at Brunswick-related companies for the better part of 16 years.
Wow. So I find amazing that since early in your life, you had this passion for the ocean and boats and everything that floats, especially with the engines. And now you're actually working for a company that provides floating for the boats. Isn't that incredible?
It is. It's been a journey, but I look back at my career, and I feel so fortunate to be in the marine industry back in the early 80s. It was quite a bit different than it is today. It was fast paced. There was a lot of cash based. There was the go fast boats. There was the Miami Vice days, and all the cigarette racing boats, and it was a completely different industry. And to experience all that, and then, as we progressed to today, what it is, it's quite a bit different. It's more technical. It's more business. It was the boat business was a lot of fun back in the early 80s. Now it's more business, but it's still fun, it's still rewarding.
Tell me, when you worked for Sirre, you probably didn't know what an ESOP was. Can you explain to the audience what an ESOP is and why is it so amazing?
Yeah, so ESOPs are amazing. So an ESOP is, and how Teakdecking's ESOP came to be. It's an employee stock ownership plan or program. That's what ESOP stands for. And our company, founded by a single individual, and he decided at some point in time he wanted to make sure that Teakdecking had a succession plan going forward. At some point in time that he wouldn't be around. So he elected to sell the company to the employees. So he actually loaned the employees, formed an ESOP, formed a corporation that he formed a loan, and he loaned the company the money to buy the company. So over the course of 10 years, we paid that loan off, and we became fully mature. And so now all of the shares of the ESOP are owned by employees. So every employee that works at Teakdecking that has been here for a year or more has ownership stock in the company. And when they retire, those shares are sold back to the company. So the deal is while you're at the company, your goal is to continue to act like an owner, make decisions like an owner, and help build the value of the share, build the value of the company. The company is, we have a valuation done every year, and it's valued just like a publicly traded company would be. And the share value is established. Every single year we go through that. And in fall, the employees get their statement, what the share value is, and they understand, how many shares they have and what the share value is, and so they can kind of track that, And so as we go forward, the employees have a vested interest in making sound decisions. I think in the U.S. there's a little over 7,000 ESOPs. Out of all the corporations, there's only 7,000.
There's not many, eh?
No.
And it's beautiful because if you have a portion of your net worth invested in the company you work for, you become part owner. So your mentality changes.
100%.
It's not how, it's all about me. It's about the group, because if the group works together well, the value of the company raises. I think at the end, everybody gets more, because if somebody buys you out and gives you 7 times the amount of worth of the share, you get 7 times more, which is how it works, right?
That's correct. That's correct. Yep, that's correct.
There is something in business and in life that I learned early, and that set me free for life. You can work all your life, but if you don't invest, you will never see the end of the tunnel.
It's true.
I didn't learn it because I was smart or anything. I'll tell you the story. I was working when I started my business. So I run a software company, and we build applications for businesses to grow their profits, business automation software, artificial intelligence, all that. In 2006, we were hired by a couple of ladies that form a startup company. They were doing accounting systems, and they wanted to do them all on the cloud. Back then, the cloud was like revolutionary, brand new. They didn't know how to do it, so they hired me. We were good friends from before. So my company started building this whole cloud system for them. About 2 years into the project, they ran out of money, and they were going bankrupt. So what they said is, David, we cannot pay you, but if you're willing, if you have enough money, keep your team going, and we will give you, in exchange of your work, we'll give you shares from the company. So I became the 3rd largest shareholder. So it was the 2 of them, and then I had the 3rd, and I only had 5%. So I earned 5% by delaying these invoices. So actually, we exchanged the invoices for the shares.
Yeah.
And honestly, I wasn't really thinking about anything for me because I didn't know it. Back then. I didn't know how to invest. So I was really doing it out of love, trying to get them out of trouble, right?
Right.
About 6 months later, an angel investor shows up. He sees the tremendous value of what they were doing. He brings in a couple of $1 million. My shares already started to grow. The market got bigger, and then he put another $5 million later on. To make the long story short, the company sold in 2011, and my 5% became 0.01% because of all the investments. But when I cashed out, it was enough for my passive income to cover my basic expenses.
Wow. And that's the value of investment.
Yeah, so I did the math. If I would have gotten the money for my bills,
Mm-hmm.
I would have lost 10 times the amount of net worth.
100%. Yeah, so our challenge is just educating them the value of the ESOP and what it truly means. And it's interesting when we have 25-year-old people, a new employee comes in there's 25 years old. The ESOP doesn't seem to matter too much to them. Doesn't click with them yet. We find that when they're about 32 years old and they have kids, then they start to understand, they start thinking deeper about the value of the ESOP and what it means. We've got a lot of tenure here. We're a 40-year-old company. We've got employees that have been here 38 years, 37 years, 20 years and more. We've got a large percentage of our employee base has been here 20 years or more.
Wow. So when they're ready to retire, now their company shares will be worth more and they're going to have a nice retirement.
That's correct.
Which is right.
And in an ESOP, the nice thing is it's, as opposed to a 401k, the 401k is your own money going into investments and things like that. For an ESOP, it's no out of pocket for them other than them showing up to work and doing the right things, making the right decisions. Yeah. And they gain shares, and at the end, they can sell those shares and cash out. It's a wonderful thing.
And also through an ESOP, you can actually influence the share value by your work and your ethic and your dedication. When you put your money in the stock market, it's basically rolling the dice and hoping that these big companies will do better.
Very true. Very true.
Richard, regarding your path to becoming a CEO, your path to becoming a top leader, what was that transitioning moment where you stopped being a technical person and you started becoming a leader?
Another great question. So, I've always been in the technical side just because I gravitate to it because I started there. But at the corporate level, it happened pretty early on. I was two years in at C-Ray and I became a supervisor, even though it was fairly technical. But they put me on to a pathway of advanced leadership. So I did Stephen Covey's 7 Habits. I went to a lot of leadership training. Every year I was required to do 80 hours of leadership training at SMU or, anywhere. So I had some really good programs with Brunswick, and I got into the advanced leadership program. So, I would say maybe 8 years in to where I was running engineering groups or running boat plants and things like that. So that I guess probably about 8 years in was when I transitioned from technical to full-on leadership. And then after 16 years of corporate life, I decided I had enough of that and went and formed my own business and had that for 13 years. And
so what did you do? So basically, you left C-Ray to start your own company?
Well, I left Brunswick Company. So I worked for C-Ray for 3 years, but I stayed with mostly Brunswick affiliated companies for 16 years, within the Brunswick envelope, which many different companies by the time the 16-year period had passed. And I left corporate life. I just got done. I ended up being kind of the guy that if they needed to form an engineering group somewhere, I went and did it, got things started. And once I got started and working, then they would move me on. I had a plant that needed some help and needed new life breathed into. I would get moved to Alabama and get this plant straightened out or whatever. And by that time, I had a young family started, and just getting moved around, bounced around in corporate life, it was just, I just had enough. So
Yeah.
I went and formed my own business. And my business initially was there to support domestic boat builders. My business was to, I got hired by boat manufacturers that had significant failures, a hull failure, a transom failure, a structural failure, and I would go out and determine what the failure was, fix the boat, and then go back to the manufacturer and work with their engineering team to design the problem out after we kind of unearthed it. And through that, I ended up getting into doing a lot of insurance work, a lot of collision damage and fire damage and sinking damage. We became known as the composite repair experts, really in the Southeast. And for the insurance companies, I was doing work all through Florida, Central America, through the Caribbean. We'd send teams to Aruba for a month, or Dominican Republic, or Turks and Caicos, or Puerto Rico, wherever they had a failure, we would go and fix. So
that is amazing. How was the difference between getting a paycheck and just earning, not knowing where the money was going to come from because of the building?
challenging times. Yeah, it's, when you start working for yourself, you pay yourself very little or nothing. Your employees come first. You learn that quick. But at the end of the day, it was highly, highly rewarding. We started with 2 of us. And by the end of year 1, I think we had 7 of us. And by the end of the year and a half, we had outgrown our first building, bought a building out of receivership. And by year 3, we had bought a second company and added to us. We leased a service end of a marina and had a building. So we had 3 elements that made up Island Coast Boat Works. And I think we had 35 employees. So we grew fast.
That was fast.
And then hurricanes come in Florida and sets you up with 3 years worth of work, and just all kinds of things just happen to you. And
right.
But yeah, it was interesting times, but very rewarding. And you reap what you sow. My goal was to provide the best benefits from a repair type company, and so I was able to get Blue Cross Blue Shield insurance for my employees, and I had a 401k, and we did a match, and a lot of things that small companies just don't do, we were able to pull off and do. But I was able to hire the best employees.
And that's one of the key elements. Treat your people well, do go above and beyond, and then hire the best people that you can find. And then your success is almost there. Then you need to actually learn how to do marketing and sales, because without that, there's no money coming in, right?
Very true. Very true.
Yep. How long did you run your business for?
13 years.
Wow, so it was a good run. You know that most businesses go bankrupt within 2 years.
Yes, so I was painfully aware of that. That's what kept me up at night and kept driving me hard.
Right.
Yeah, those early days, I'd go to work at 4 a.m. and I would work in the shop until noon, and I would clean up and change my clothes, and then from noon till 5, I'd go out and sell and more work. And that was my life for the first couple of years.
And this is what people don't understand, right? A lot of people want to start their own business because they want to have more freedom, more time.
Yeah.
And that comes, but you have to pay the price for that. And that's the first few years. Exactly. Yes. Like you, I was doing the same thing, right? I was coding when I started my business in 2005. Coding like three quarters of the day, and then I will go in and sell, because who will sell? I have no money to buy to hire salespeople, right?
Oh,
so my 10-12 hour executive work day became 14, 15, 16 hours. Yes. Self-employed, self-employed work day.
Yeah, if you look at the beginning years of entrepreneurship, you wonder why people even do it, because you don't get paid anything and you work twice as hard.
Exactly.
But as you say, you get past that 2-3 year hump, it becomes worth it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But it's all about the people. It's all about, you're only as good as the people that you surround yourself with.
For sure. What happened after those 13 years?
So we survived the recession, which was good, and at some point in time, so towards probably the last couple of years, I had a lot of people that worked for me for 10, 12 years, but they started retiring. My really good craftsmen started retiring. And trying to replace them was just becoming impossible. And, this is back, oh, good gosh, this goes back 15 years, 23, 30. So this is back in the early 2000s, 2010. You just couldn't find good quality labor. And so I started kind of worrying about it. And so at one point in time, someone wanted it worse than me. And we were kind of at a point, so I just took the option and just got out and let it become someone else's problem.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So you were able to sell it.
Yes. So after that, I went into yacht brokerage. Went and got my yacht broker's license, and that was a horrible experience.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I could sell boats, but it just didn't work for me. Being an operations guy, engineering, you walk into work every morning, you know what you need to get done. And at the end of the day, if you're operations or engineering, if you've accomplished those things, and you can say, I had a good day or a bad day. When you're selling in a yacht brokerage world, you don't know if you're doing good or bad until you get a commission check.
Right.
So I couldn't turn it off. I had to keep planting corn. I just had to keep selling, and so I was driving myself nuts and everyone around me nuts. And secondly, I had a sales manager, and of course they want you to close sales and deals. And by this time I'd been in the boat business for 16, almost 30 years, and had a reputation of doing the right thing. And I would have a boat, and I knew just from my experience in boating that it was not a good boat. And these people wanted to buy, and like, no, or we get a survey. I said, no, I'm not going to sell you that boat. And it would drive my sales manager nuts. It's like, why didn't you sell them that boat? We can fix those things. I'm like, no, because in a year, those people are going to hate me. They're going to be mad at me because the boat's not a good boat. And I don't operate that way. So it was just it just wasn't good for me. It wasn't a good fit for my personality and how I do business.
And Richard, that's another awesome lesson, a key point of wisdom. Keep your integrity. Have values and respect your values, because by making a quick buck, you go turn around and tarnish your reputation. And look at you're still in the boat business. Like for me, that's the one thing I told my team. We are as good as our last project.
Yes.
We're as good as our last client. Never lay down your guard because you had a beautiful experience and we made this award or we got this huge client happy. No. Every single client counts, and we have to keep our reputation intact, because that's what keeps us in the market, right?
100%. It's all about relationships, and at the end of the day, you look yourself in the mirror and know you did the right thing.
How do you end up working at the company that you are right now?
So I ended up consulting for a good friend of mine through the marine industry was running operations for a small boat manufacturer north of Sarasota, and they needed some help. So he asked if I could come in and help them sort some things out. So I said, well, I'll come in, a 6-month contract and help you out. So I did. And while I was there, I was sending emails out, and one of the emails I sent out was to Teakdecking, and the past president of Teakdecking had worked at Sea Ray years ago, and I knew him, and he saw my name on an email. So he reached out to me and said, hey, saw your name on an email. What are you doing at this boat company? I'm like, well, I'm just here for 6 months helping him out. And he said, would you be interested in talking to us about possibly working at Teakdecking? So sure, love to talk to you. So I met him, the past president, and the current VP of sales, and met him for lunch and talked to him. And they at the time were looking for someone to mentor from the VP of sales who had been with this company since its beginning and take over his role. So that's what's interesting, because I've done everything in the boat business, but I don't know anything about carpentry work. I know zero about wood. I can tell you all
Right.
about fiberglass and structure and paint and engines and drives and electrical. I don't know anything about woodwork. Well, they ended up hiring me because they knew that I knew the yacht business and knew how to talk to captains and owners and billionaires and millionaires and boatyards and marinas and all that stuff. And so they hired me. And but I said, if I'm going to work for you and I'm going to sell your product, I need to know how it's made. And I want to work in a shop. And so I've been in the marine industry for 32 years. I've run boat plants, have my own business. And they said, fine. So they set up a 3-month program, and I worked at every single department in this facility. I learned how to be a carpenter. I'm a terrible carpenter, but I learned how to be a carpenter. And
But
I learned,
you had the knowledge though, right? You acquired the knowledge.
yes, but I learned how a teak deck goes together. I learned all about our epoxies and our caulking, and how to properly lay one out, how to properly install it, how to template a boat so you can make one. I did everything. And everything from working in the warehouse to the lab to the trim floor to the jig room to mixing epoxy, did it all. And it really resonated with me. I said, what company would hire somebody, pay them a salary, and expect nothing out of them for 90 days? Teakdecking. But they invested in me, and I just value that so highly to this day. And that's been, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago, 9 years ago. But that's just the company that they are. So anyways, long story short, they hired me and I did my training. And by the time I got done with my training, they asked me if I would abandon my aspirations or their aspirations for me to mentor from the sales guy and take over operations. And so through a 30-day argument, I conceded and took over operations here at Teakdecking and ran manufacturing, and it's a good thing. So worked here. The president that was here, ultimately, he decided to retire, and I got selected to fill his shoes, and here I am.
But think about it. Throughout your career, you became an expert, in the technical part, in the engineering part. Then you became an expert in operations. Then you became an expert in sales. And even with all that business acumen, after 30 years of being in the industry, you were humble enough to ask them, I don't know anything about woodworking or anything about flooring, so I need to learn that first. So it takes that level of commitment and realizing that you don't know everything so that you can succeed. And look at you now. Now you're leading this amazing company, but you went down and said, I'm going to work at the shop 3 months. Nobody does that, Richard. This is one of the things that I love the most about your story, because especially when people are grown and they have so much experience, they're like, come on, I don't go that low. And that's ego. And what arrogance and ego does is that it doesn't allow you to grow, right?
Yeah. Arrogance and ego is a bad combination. It's dangerous. Yeah. The only thing you can add to that is alcohol, and that's a really bad combination.
Richard, tell me something. I can tell by the way you operate that you take care of your body. I know you have a beautiful routine. How do you handle your work day or your work week so that you still have time to take care of your health?
Yeah. So I just wake up at 4:45 every morning, and it's like you just said. If you don't, you can't take care of others if you don't take care of yourself first. And I learned that being a father. You have to really, your kids, wife, family take up a lot, but you have to be pulled together to be able to manage the family. And it's no different in the business world. But I start my day at 4:45 in the morning, as my wife does, and we both go off to our individual gyms. And I spend an hour and 15 minutes in the gym in the morning. And I put my earbuds in and I go train like a nut job for an hour and 15 minutes. And I do supersets, and it's the best hour of my day. I go home, take a shower, eat some food, come to work. And I walk into the office at 8 o'clock and I'm spooled up because I've already been up for 3.5 hours, had a great workout, and everyone's still waking up, getting their coffee, trying to get their day started, and I'm just ready to go. And so, yeah, it ends up being a little bit of an awkward dynamic, but they've learned to deal with it, and I'm okay with it. But and so I come to work, and I'm here all day. I bring my lunch, and I eat at my desk, and I do emails it's my quiet hour. That lunchtime is my quiet time. I get caught up in emails, get caught up in reading some stuff, and it leaves me available to the team all morning. It leaves me available to the team all afternoon.
That's beautiful. Now, if you wake up that early, you must go to bed pretty early. How much hours of sleep do you put in a day?
If I get 7 hours of sleep, it's good.
7 hours. Because, I'm always trying to figure out life regarding your health, because I'm just like you, right? I'm trying to figure out what do I need to optimize my health, my body. I eat food for fuel, not just for pleasure. And it's beautiful to see somebody such as yourself, so successful and still working out every single day. Do you work out 5 times a day or you have rest days?
I go 5 days a week. And depending on time of year, I'll go on a Saturday for an hour. But the weekends I are just optional for me. Saturday's an optional for me. Sunday I don't go. So yeah, I call it typically 5 days, and sometimes it's 6 days, but typically 5. Yeah. I don't like coming to work without going to the gym first. My day is just off.
Yeah, because you're also releasing all the stress, everything that is wrong with the day before, it just gets cleared out, right? And there's studies that show that your endorphins go through the roof when you have a built body, right? When you're disciplined with your body.
Yeah, my metabolism is thankfully high, and I'm like you. I eat, and I eat very well. I eat clean. I don't eat a lot of garbage, and I eat all day. I do eat all day. I have a refrigerator behind me, and I just eat all day. But it's just, I guess, how I'm wired. I'm fortunate. I'm blessed.
That's beautiful. Richard, I don't want to take your time. You're so kind to sharing your wisdom with my audience. I'll ask you one more question before we finish the podcast. If you had access to a billboard in front of the busiest highway on earth, what would you write in it?
If I had access to a billboard on the busiest highway, wow. Boy, that's a stumper. That's a stumper. Treat others as you want to be treated. Because I think it's all about relationships, and your day is only as good as you treat the day. Your interactions with people are only as good as how you interact with them. And if you treat people like you want to be treated, it's going to be a good day.
It's crazy because what you just said is in the Bible. It's one of the best important principles that Jesus left us. Treat others as you treat yourself. It says, love your neighbor as you love yourself. If we were actually able to do that, we will live in a different world.
Oh, amen to that. Amen to that. So true. So true.
Richard, brother, thank you so much for your time. If people like to ask you more questions, if they want to find out more about you, where can they find you online?
They can find me certainly on Instagram. I think I'm RJ Strauss and on Instagram. You can send me an email to rjstrauss60@gmail.
Beautiful.
And I'm at rstrauss@teakdecking.com.
Fantastic. Richard, thank you so much. Please keep helping make this world a better place, and have a wonderful rest of the week.
You as well. Thank you so much for your time.
Cheers.
It's been a pleasure.
That's all for today's episode of the Break Free Podcast. Head on over to iTunes and subscribe to the show. Starting your own business can be tough, but it doesn't have to be. Visit davidmansilla.com to pick up a copy of the #1 international best-selling book, Breaking Out of Corporate Jail. Expand what you consider to be possible and reach your full potential. And join us on the next episode.